What if I told you that the fertilizer killing your soil and the pesticides poisoning your food were originally designed to kill humans in warfare? That victory gardens during World War II fed 40% of America using methods that worked for 10,000 years. But the moment peace arrived, chemical companies needed somewhere to sell leftover bombs and nerve gas. So they convinced you those ancient techniques didn't work anymore. Everything wrong with modern agriculture, every dead zone in the ocean, every collapsed bee colony, every poisoned water supply traces back to a single decision made in 1945. Bomb factories needed peacetime profits, and your grandparents' proven gardening methods threatened those profits. This is the story of how weapons of mass destruction became your garden's worst enemy. During World War II, 20 million American families planted Victory Garden. The government launched a massive campaign encouraging citizens to grow food at home so commercial agriculture could feed troops overseas. Eleanor Roosevelt planted one on the White House lawn. Schools converted playgrounds into gardens. Empty city lots became community farms. By 1944, they produced 40% of all vegetables consumed in the United States. Not grain, not the caloric staples, vegetables. But that 40% represented something profound. 20 million families, most with no agricultural training, successfully grew abundant food using methods that required no synthetic inputs, no chemical pesticides, no industrial supply chains. How did they do it? Composting kitchen scraps and yard waste to build soil fertility, rotating crops to prevent nutrient depletion and pest buildup, companion planting to naturally repel insects, saving seeds from their best plants, mulching to retain moisture and suppress weeds. These were sophisticated agricultural systems refined over centuries of observation and practice. Sir Albert Howard, a British scientist who spent 26 years studying traditional farming in India, developed the indoor method of composting. Layer plant waste with animal manure and soil, turn it regularly to incorporate air, monitor moisture and temperature. Within months, the mixture transformed into rich, dark humus that fed plants better than any manufactured fertilizer. In 1940, Howard published an agricultural testament arguing that soil health, plant health, animal health, and human health were inseparable. Chemical fertilizers, he warned, would destroy the complex ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms that made soil alive. He wasn't opposed to science. He was a trained botanist with decades of research experience. He opposed treating soil as an inert medium for holding plants upright while you poured chemicals on them. Victory Gardens proved him right. Millions of families grew abundant food using organic methods. The system worked. Then the war ended, and everything changed. The bomb factories needed a new market. During World War II, the United States government constructed 10 massive ammonia production plants to manufacture explosives. By war's end, these plants were producing 730,000 tons of ammonia annually. They represented hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure investment, and suddenly they had no market. The chemical industry chose conversion. Ammonium nitrate, designed to explode under enemy tanks, became nitrogen fertilizer, the same chemical, the same factory, a different marketing campaign. The pitch was simple. Synthetic nitrogen would increase yields, make farming easier, feed the growing population. What they didn't mention was the long-term cost. Chemical nitrogen kills the bacteria that normally fix nitrogen from the air. It acidifies soil. It leaches into groundwater. It creates dead zones in ocean. The Mississippi River Dead Zone, 8,000 square miles where agricultural runoff has killed everything in the Gulf of Mexico, is a direct result of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. But the ammonia plants were only half the story. Nerve gas became pesticide. In the 1930s, German chemist Gerhard Schroeder was researching insecticides for IG Farben, the massive chemical conglomerate that supplied the Nazi war machine. In 1936, Schroeder synthesized tabun while looking for compounds that would kill insects by disrupting their nervous system. He accidentally inhaled a small amount during testing. Within minutes, his vision blurred. His pupils contracted to pinpoint. He struggled to breathe. He nearly died. Tabun was the first nerve gas. Schroeder reported his discovery to the German military. They classified all his research as secret. For the next 8 years, Schroeder worked on developing more potent nerve agents. He created sarin in 1938, then soman in 1944, the deadliest chemical weapons ever developed. These compounds worked by inhibiting acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme that breaks down the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. When acetylcholinesterase stops working, acetylcholine accumulates. Muscles contract uncontrollably. Victims convulse, vomit, lose bowel control, and suffocate as their respiratory muscles lock up. The Nazis never used these nerve agents in combat, fearing Allied retaliation. But after the war, American companies acquired Schroeder's research. They realized the same compounds could be modified to create insecticides that killed crop pests. Parathion and malathion became the first organophosphate pesticides commercialized in the United States. They were chemical cousins of the nerve agents, derived from the same research, utilizing the same mechanism, cholinesterase inhibition. The warfare compounds and the agricultural compounds shared a family tree. Farm workers exposed to organophosphate pesticides suffer symptoms identical to low-level nerve gas exposure: blurred vision, muscle weakness, nausea, difficulty breathing, seizures, death. Approximately 3 million people globally are exposed to organophosphates each year. 300,000 die from acute poisoning. In the United States alone, about 8,000 organophosphate poisoning cases are reported annually. Most victims are farm workers and their families. Children are particularly vulnerable because their developing nervous systems are more susceptible to neurotoxic damage. The Rockefeller connection. IG Farben wasn't just a Nazi operation. It was deeply intertwined with Rockefeller's Standard Oil. In 1929, Standard Oil and IG Farben formed what they called a marriage. They divided global markets. IG Farben controlled chemicals. Standard Oil controlled petroleum. They shared patents, technology, and profits. The agreement explicitly stated it would continue whether or not the United States is at war. When Schrader developed nerve gas in the 1930s, he was working for a company in partnership with the Rockefeller Empire. When those nerve agents were converted to pesticides after the war, the same corporate networks profited. The Truman Committee investigation in 1942 revealed the extent of collaboration. Standard Oil had provided IG Farben with technology for producing synthetic rubber and synthetic gasoline, both critical for the Nazi war effort. In return, IG Farben gave Standard Oil 2,000 patents, including chemical processes that became the foundation of post-war agricultural chemicals. The same Rockefeller interests that funded the Flexner Report in 1910, eliminating natural medicine from medical schools and creating pharmaceutical dependency, now controlled the transition of agriculture from organic to chemical. Eliminate the natural alternative, create dependency on patented synthetic products, capture regulatory agencies to protect market dominance. Sir Albert Howard's indoor composting method couldn't be patented. Anyone could do it. There were no recurring revenue streams. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides solved that problem. They could be manufactured, branded, and sold year after year. Farmers who switched to chemical inputs found their soil degraded over time, requiring more chemicals to maintain yield. The system was designed for dependency, the Faustian bargain. In the 1960s and 1970s, the Green Revolution transformed global agriculture. Norman Borlaug's high-yield wheat varieties, powered by chemical fertilizers, prevented famines that would have killed hundreds of millions in India and Pakistan. Borlaug won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 for saving what some estimate as 1 billion lives. The Green Revolution was a genuine humanitarian success in the immediate term, but we made a Faustian bargain. We traded long-term soil health for short-term yield increases. We traded clean water for abundant grain. We traded agricultural independence for permanent corporate dependency. The system worked so brilliantly in the short term that we built our entire civilization on it. Global population exploded from 3 billion in 1960 to 8 billion today, fed by synthetic nitrogen. Now we're trapped. We can't stop using chemical fertilizers even as we watch the consequences compound. The dead ocean zones expanding, the topsoil eroding, the farm workers poisoning. This is the brilliance of the trap. Create a dependency so total that questioning it seems like advocating mass death. Make the short-term benefits so undeniable that long-term costs become impossible to address. Rockefeller didn't need to suppress organic agriculture through force. He just needed to make chemical agriculture so productive in the immediate term that building an alternative became unthinkable. By the time the environmental costs became obvious, we were already dependent. Sir Albert Howard warned about this in 1940. He predicted that treating soil as inert substrate for chemical delivery would create short-term gains followed by long-term degradation. He was right. We chose not to listen because the short-term gains were too seductive to resist. What this means today: we're living inside the consequences of the 1945 choice. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizer accounts for 2% of global energy consumption. The Haber-Bosch process requires enormous amounts of natural natural gas, and we need it. Right now, billions depend on food grown with synthetic nitrogen. Turning off the bomb factories would cause famines. Soil worldwide has lost 30 to 75% of its organic carbon due to chemical agriculture. The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico grows larger every year. Organophosphate pesticides continue poisoning farm workers globally. Most people under 50 have never seen anyone make compost properly. The agricultural literacy commonplace in 1945 has been systematically erased. We're told organic farming can't feed the world. But Victory Gardens demonstrated that organic methods work at a significant scale when knowledge is widespread. The real question is whether we can transition an 8 billion person civilization from chemical dependency back to ecological agriculture without causing mass starvation. That's the legacy of the Faustian bargain. The choice we face: individual action won't solve systemic problems. Your backyard compost pile won't fix the Gulf of Mexico dead zone. Pretending otherwise is delusional. But individual action can preserve knowledge, demonstrate alternatives, build resilience, prove that the methods your grandparents used weren't inferior, just less profitable to corporations. Start a compost pile. Layer kitchen scraps with leaves and grass clippings. Within months, you'll have fertilizer that builds soil instead of depleting it. Plant a garden, rotate crops, save seeds, learn the skills that were commonplace in 1945 and systematically erased by 1970. Your grandparents did it, their grandparents did it, humans did it successfully for 10,000 years. The only reason you think you can't is because companies profiting from chemical dependency spent 75 years convincing you traditional methods don't work. We're not going back to 1945. We can't feed 8 billion people with backyard Victory Gardens. The trap is real, but we can start building the knowledge base for whatever comes next. When synthetic nitrogen becomes unaffordable, when organophosphates are finally banned, when soil degradation reaches the point where chemical inputs stop working. The transition is coming, whether we plan for it or not. The question is whether we preserve the knowledge to make that transition survivable. Your grandparents knew how to grow food without killing soil. They proved it during the war. Make sure someone in the next generation knows it too.